Looking at the disadvantages or demerits of a socialist economy, we note the following. And we have seen that the advantages are there, and this is a comparative analysis. We are comparing with the capitalist economy to find which of the two is a better economic system. And if we look at the disadvantages or demerits of a socialist economy, the following can be identified. 1. It is an expensive system. How is it expensive? Unlike the capitalist economy, where forces of demand and supply determine the price, here we have noted that government fixes the prices in the form of maximum and minimum prices. In case of shortages of goods and services, there has to be rationing of goods and services. All these are done by people who need to be paid, and you find that that's where the administrative expenses come in to be high. You have to employ people to supervise, monitor, administer the government policies of regulating prices, rationing out of goods and services, which is not least encountered within the market economy or free enterprise economy. Then there is a high rate of resource wastage due to overestimation by government. They are planning, they know their population, and maybe they have made a plan of how much is going to be produced for a given period of time. But you find that we are human, and for that matter, we can either produce more than desired or produce less than desired. So resources are wasted wherever they produce more than desired. Unlike in the capitalist economy, where supply creates its own, demand creates its own supply, and the two are going to be equated. Demand will always be equal to supply, but here supply may be greater than demand, and their resources are wasted. Then discourages hard work by individuals because of no private gain. People work for the sake of working. After all, it is for all of us. What am I gaining out of it? So they tend to be lazy. They don't have that I don't care attitude to whom it may concern, and that is not very good because it breeds a high level of inefficiency and maybe absenteeism at the workplace, as you see no personal gain out of it. Then leads to delays in decision making. We find that here an individual doesn't have the onus to make a decision on his own. Decisions are made by a panel, and that panel may be having different stages which you have to go through. So there is a high rate of bureaucracy. You have to go step by step, and by the time you get the final decision, a lot of time has been wasted. So there is a lot of time wasting or delays in decision making because of the various consultations that have to be made before a final decision is passed out. Then it limits consumer choices as there is no variety. Why? Government is the only producer. Unlike in a capitalist economy where individuals are free to partake on the production of goods and services and a variety of whatever they want, here we find that it's government producing what it wants for you and what it thinks it is for your welfare. As we saw, demerit goods are not there, so they are interested in the well-being of the people. So we find that consumers are subjected to a limited variety or even no variety at all. What is available is what you take because it's what government wants for you. Then quality of products is low because of lack of competition. Government does not compete with itself. All the bodies, organizations belong to the government. They have the same motive. They have the same objective. There are no private individuals that are going to be there laboring for betterment of quality or increase in output or gaining a high profit. So in the final analysis, the quality of the products leaves a lot to be desired because nobody will complain. What government gives you is what you go with. No complaint and no alternative or no substitute. Then it leads to inefficiency as there is no profit drive. People tend to be highly innovative and creative when they have a profit drive. They tend to improve on the packaging, They tend to improve on the aroma of their products to make it more attractive, to make it able to sell, and all those are signs of efficiency in production. But here, whether you make it attractive or not, it is what is there, and it will be taken by the consumers, whatever the case. So there is a high degree of inefficiency in the production units, and that is brought about due to the absence of profitability in production. So generally, those are the the demerits of socialist economy. And now let's look at the third one, because we said that economic systems in the world today are mainly three: capitalist, socialist, and the next one, which is a mixed economic system. Three: mixed economic system. By virtue of the word itself, mixed, it means that you are borrowing or you are interacting features of different economic systems, but since we have only seen it two, here we are mixing the features of the socialist economy with those of a capitalist economy. In most cases, a mixed economy picks out the advantages of both. It maximizes those advantages in both of them and brings them to operate as a mixture. Whatever is good in a controlled economy will be brought into this system. Whatever is good in a capitalist economy will be brought on board, and then you try to maximize their operation for the benefit of everybody and for purposes of economic growth and development, and also minimize their disadvantages. Whatever we have seen as a disadvantage in each of these two economic systems, in a mixed economy, they will try as much as possible to make sure that these disadvantages do not surface or they do not appear. So a mixed economy is where resources are owned by the central government or the state alongside the private sector or the individuals. It is an economic system that has both socialist and capitalist elements existing side by side. And most economies of the world today are mixed economies. What is important to stress there is the ownership of resources and the means of production. They are owned by both the central government alongside the private sector. Economic system, where the government or state alongside the private sector own and control resources. Own and control resources in the economy. So individuals are free to own resources, as we saw in the capitalist, and the government also owns a certain percentage or share of resources, but to a greater extent, government role seems to be having a higher percentage. So government role is more highlighted, in this economy. The government role is more highlighted in this economy. And again I've noted that it is the one operating in the world today. So what are its features? Features or traits of a mixed economy. We see that there is ownership of resources by both the government and the individual. The real economic decisions of what to produce are made by both the state and the private individuals. Production is aimed at both welfare and profit maximization. I think you can see that we are trying to bring together the features of capitalism and the features of socialism in our mixed economy. Whatever feature appeared in each of the two economic systems now comes as a combined feature in our mixed economy. So we are saying that there is ownership, ownership of resources by both government and individuals, whereby individuals, we saw that these were owning resources in a capitalist economy, and government was owning resources in a socialist economy. So now both are blending in a mixed economy and they are free to own resources. Then economic decisions. Economic decisions are made by both. Again, they move together, they are concurrent, inseparable, by both the government, again, and individuals. So there is freedom of decision making and also planning by the government. Then when we come to production aims at welfare maximization, that is for the socialist economy, and profit maximization. Again, as we noted that for the capitalist, producers aim at profit maximization, yet for socialists, the government is interested in welfare maximization. So again, we are blending these two so that they appear in our mixed economy. Then we find that there is coexistence. That is, they are operating together harmoniously. There is coexistence of private and public sectors. So the private sector allows for private investments to be undertaken in the economy, yet the public sector allows the centrally appointed authorities to undertake investments on behalf of the government. So these two coexist. They are not rivals like we saw in the capitalist economy where there is a high degree of rivalry. Then there is regulated consumption. First of all, let's look at production. There is regulated production and consumption. Regulated production and consumption in this society. Who regulates? We saw that under the socialist economy, government is there, and it even sets up bodies that are going to regulate prices, and you can regulate consumption through prices, and you can also regulate production through subsidies and taxes. So the government is there to subsidize and tax producers, and for consumption, it can also try to avail commodities or maybe fixed prices that are in favor of the consumers. Then we see that there is presence of indicative planning, presence of indicative planning. And what do we mean by this one? This is where government gives incentives. Government gives the incentives and the required information which the private sector follows to pursue investments, which the private sector follows to pursue investments. So government does not give regulations as such, but it's like the traffic lights. It gives you an indicator. Now the road is okay, it is safe, the jam is not there, then it gives you the orange light. If it is dangerous, you stop. If it is okay, it gives you the green light after the orange one, meaning that now you can go. So this is what we call indicative planning. You give incentives, you give guidelines, you give the necessary information, and the people, since they have their own resources, they are able to own and they're able to make choices. Then they can see, okay, government has given us the roads in our area. Should we just stay idle and a road has been given? Then utilize that road through marketing or whatever you're producing and become commercial producers other than remaining subsistence producers, and the road is there to facilitate the marketing of your products to wider markets. So now it is the individual who is making a choice of expanding his scale of production, but the government has already provided with you a better infrastructure, which is a good road that is all weather, and then you go ahead and produce. So in a mixed economy, the government role or government is there to make sure that it is planning for you via indicators, and these indicators should stimulate you to pursue certain lines of production in order to achieve your predetermined objectives. Then allocation of resources. Allocation of resources is by the state, as we saw, in a socialist economy, but also by the forces of demand and supply. Forces of demand and supply. Forces of demand and supply operate in a capitalist, yet the state operates in a socialist. So that's why I was talking all along of a blend of these features. You bring all of them here and you try to see how they operate alongside each other. Will they be in harmony? Will they be conflicting? And that's when we shall be able to identify whether it is advantageous, beneficial, or a demerit to have a mixed economy. So since we said that government role is highly emphasized, let's find out what this role is in a mixed economy. What is government supposed to do? If you are in a mixed economy, what are your expectations out of the central planning body? Role of government. Role of government in a mixed economy. In a mixed economy. So what will government be doing in the mixed economy? We say that it has to regulate prices, it has to regulate production, it has to give indicators here and there, and we find that it is the role of the government to tax. So, taxing the rich. And why are the rich taxed? In order to bring about equality, in order to bring about equality in society. We saw that a capitalist economy is responsible for the highlights of income and wealth inequality. So if that was a danger and was making some people impoverished and unable to access goods and services, the moment you choose to be a mixed economy, then government makes sure that you try to bring about equality in your society. And this is usually done by imposing high taxes on the rich so that you redistribute the resources and the income so that they can trickle down to the needy or the poor, who can also try to have a favorable standard of living or favorable welfare. And when you tax them, what do? You provide with them public goods. So the tax income then will provide public goods which are enjoyed by everybody with no exclusion. So now everybody will be able to have access to those public goods. Another role is subsidizing the poor. So if you are taxing the rich, don't use taxes only, because it's like killing the golden goose that lays the golden egg. The rich people are our investors. If they don't have the money, you overtax them and you leave them with no profitability, then there will be nothing for you to boast about. So these rich people are our investors, and if you discourage them, they may run away and go to tax havens, which are countries which don't impose taxes on their economic activities. So taxing should be to a limited extent. So if you want to bring about equality, there is another alternative policy, which is subsidizing the poor, with the low-income earners. So it is the role of the government to subsidize the poor, and this is by providing the basic goods at affordable prices. Serving the poor by providing basic goods at affordable prices. These are goods are like soap, maybe sugar, maybe power and energy. So government will be there to regulate the distribution of those commodities, and it will be subsidizing the producers such that the producers can be able to come out with these items at relatively lower prices which everybody can afford, so that the poor people are not left out and suffer from low standards of living. Then government has a role of setting up industries, and infrastructure which cannot be left to the private sector, So there are some industries or some activities economically which are, let's say, security sensitive, and if you leave them for the private sector, you are plunging your economy into disaster. So those which are security sensitive, they have to be set up by the government. You can't say that let individuals take up industries to manufacture bullets and guns. You are going to have disaster created itself. So such security sensitive kind of industries, they are the ones which are handled by the government, and then those which are not security threatening, they will be set up by the private sector. Then providing essential goods. It is the role of government to provide essential goods. Here there were basic goods at affordable prices, but there are those which are essential. And why are they essential? Because they do not have any kind of profitability, and such essential goods are safe water, for example, sewerage. It is the government that is supposed to provide that one, and also energy, especially the hydroelectric power, and the roads. These are what we call the essential goods. These are supposed to be provided by the government in a mixed economy. Don't leave them to the individuals or the private sector. They may not be affordable to everybody. Then it's the role of the government to make sure that commodities meet the standards. So avoiding wrong or misleading labels on the products. And that's why in Uganda we have the National Bureau of Standards, such that the commodities meet the required standards and the consumers are not exploited. So this one is intended to reduce consumer exploitation through poor quality products. So all goods that are produced have to meet the required standards before they are distributed out to the consumers. It is the role of the government to avoid shortages of certain commodities. Avoiding shortages shortages of certain products, avoiding shortages of certain products and services because due to the presence of profit-minded firms, presence of profit-minded firms which create shortages, So, avoiding shortages of certain products due to presence of profit-minded firms which create these shortages. So it's the duty of the government to make sure that goods are available on the market in ample quantities or satisfactory quantities. Then the role of the government again is to provide employment to the people. Provide and maintain employment for the people. We saw that in a capitalist economy, it leads to a high degree of unemployment because people are replaced by machines as the private individuals or investors are interested in efficient production, and machines are more efficient than people, hence laying off people and creating unemployment. So government now has that role in a mixed economy because it also has the authority. It will try to make sure that jobs are provided for and those who are working remain in work, and this is mainly when government comes to subsidize the inefficient firms so that they are not outcompeted, and also gives laws on employment or labor kind of laws so that they can always be supported and maybe their interest looked into so that they are not completely exploited. Let's look at the advantages. This is the role of the government. It has to play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, at least 7 roles, which are major, but you can supplement these with further reading and you can try to elaborate on them further in your discussions so that you get a thorough understanding of what a mixed economy is. What is important, it is the mixture of socialism and capitalism, and the good elements are brought in, and the bad elements are left out so that you get a smooth running. Advantages. Advantages of a mixed economy. Advantages of a mixed economy. What is so of advantage? We find that it improves on the quality. It improves on the quality of the products, because it allows for competition. This competition, which was lacking in a socialist economy, now in a mixed economy, it is there because you allow individuals to have their own choices, own their own resources, and you find that it is up to them to compete favorably in the market and be sustained there, and your sustaining factor will be the quality of your product. The better the quality, the more the sustainability. Then there is provision of essential goods. There is provision of essential goods. Provision of essential goods. Why? because of presence of government. Presence of government, which has to fulfill that role. So government is also there, and it is its duty, as we've seen in the roles, to provide the essential goods. So in this mixed economy, those goods will not be lacking since government participation is accepted. Then provides a variety of products. Why? Because both government and individuals engage in production. Both government and individuals engage in production. Variety of products. Why? Because both government and individuals engage in production, and their choice of products are not the same. So the different choices which are made, for that matter, give us the variety in the economy. There is also reduced income inequality. Reduced income inequality. Why? Because of the government policies. Towards that effort. So government policies like maybe taxation, subsidization are going to be implemented for the sake of reducing income inequality, to make sure that incomes are more equitably distributed. Then there is limited wastage of resources. Limited wastage of resources. Limited, not saying that there is no wastage at all, but it is there, but limited. Why? Because of the regulated competition. Government regulates the competition because of regulated competition. Regulated competition by government. So resources are not that wasted. Government is there. Wherever you see the resources are now being put into the production of unnecessary commodities, which may be a sign of wastage, then you impose a high tax on that particular commodity. A high tax will increase the prices, hence making the product not easily affordable to the consumers. And for a producer who is aiming at maximizing profits, the moment you are not selling, you are likely to close your premises. So you have to abide by the government regulations and controls, and don't use resources where they are not so much desired. Then there are more employment opportunities. There are more employment opportunities. There are more employment opportunities created. Employment opportunities created in both systems operating together. So some people are employed by the government, others are employed in the private sector, and you get a bigger number of people having jobs other than having just the government as the major employer, or the private sector where individuals try to look for their own employment, but now you are combining both in the government and in the private sector, and many jobs will be available. So now lastly, let's look at the disadvantages of a mixed economy. Disadvantages of a mixed economy. What is not so good about this economy? We find that the private sector suffers from many restrictions imposed on their activities. For example, the high taxes, the expensive licenses, and these discourage investment. Mixed economy always has a weak public sector, which is also inefficient, and this burdens the private sector. Then the public and private sectors in most cases conflict, where profits are limited by government through fixing low prices for some items. So private sector suffers from many restrictions. Now we find that private sector is being suffocated. Private sector suffers from many restrictions from the government. For example, taxes, licenses, which you need to buy in order to operate, in order to import, in order to export, and so on, in order to drive a car. So all these are being imposed on the private sector, and usually they are not happy. Then it has been observed that the private sector, the mixed economy has a weak public sector, meaning that the private sector usually dominates. Private sector usually dominates, following the profit motive. Following the profit motive. So in certain instances, the government finds itself in a position in which it is helpless to control and regulate the private sector, and it may leave them to operate as they may find it profitable and fitting. Then another disadvantage is that these two sectors usually conflict. Public and private sectors. Private sectors tend to conflict. Why do they conflict, or where do they conflict? This is when profits are limited. When profits are limited by the government. So government, let's say, imposes a low minimum price, which is not going to be profitable, and this is not good. It is usually detrimental to the producers. So public and private sectors tend to conflict when profits are limited by the government through a low minimum price. Stop. So those are generally the common demerits which we encounter or we come across in our economic systems. We have seen that there are three: socialist, capitalist, and the mixed economy. And economies of today are generally mixed economies. They blend the advantages of both of them and try to minimize the disadvantages of both, so that they are able to come out with their goals or objectives of development.